in Chicago. We actually are about a 30-some odd percent decrease, 34% decrease in homicides from last year right now. Originally the stats went down, then they went up, then they went down again, and we're maintaining where we are right now. Again, we're not operating citywide, we're operating in 5 districts. We focus on those districts. We don't shy away from the problems we have in Chicago. Chicago can be a violent city from time to time. Most areas can. South Bend has shown a propensity for violence as well. The challenge is not, what's going on and who's better, who's worse. The challenge is who has an idea to fix this thing? How can we change this thing? How can we get moving in the right direction? And I think it's imperative for all of our cities, especially Midwestern cities right next to each other. We share more similar problems than we do with Los Angeles or New York and Chicago. We share scope and size with Los Angeles and New York, and Boston perhaps, but we share more of the same attitudes, values, and beliefs that you see on the street with South Bend and with Gary, Indiana, and other places as well that are closer to Chicago. But our numbers have been going down, and it's a matter of all the pieces coming together. It can't be one. You can't rely on the police themselves and only the law enforcement partners to do it. You can't rely on your mayor and only your politicians to do it. You can't rely on your ministers and your pastors to get it done. It has to be a combination of everybody working together. The challenge is, do we have a strategy that can integrate all of the great efforts that are going on right now and add some efforts that might be a little bit better or tweak things to get them going in a little bit different direction? The goal being, what's an acceptable number? An acceptable number is always 0. The goal in the acceptable number is 0 shootings and 0 homicides. And until we get there, we have to keep working and finding better ways to do the work that we do.
Are your numbers that are going down based on homicide or based on shooting in general? Obviously, it's been publicized over the weekend for Father's Day weekend. You guys had 40-some shootings and 8 deaths.
Right. Yeah, there's a time in Chicago which people tend to forget very quickly, especially in the world of the media, where about 10 years ago we had about 1,000 homicides a year.
Yeah.
So when we have 510 homicides in a year, it's a horrible thing, but it's about half of what it used to be. And I think part of the challenge is, how do you educate the public? How do you educate the media? How do you educate people on public violence? How do you look at public violence? If you look at day to day, year to year, that's one thing, and that's important, but you also have to look at the trends, not just the trends citywide, the trends in communities. Then you have to try to diagnose what's the root causes of these things. Data is very important, but you have to understand what the data really means and what you're looking at. The numbers have gone down. Shootings have gone down as well, I believe. You'll have to get those actual numbers from the Chicago Police Department.
In your districts, are you saying, or overall?
Overall,
okay.
And in our districts as well. But they'll fluctuate. We're operating in districts where there's been a high propensity for violence. Some of the districts where we operate have driven the numbers of violence in the city for a decade or more. But the reality is, are we going to go to a comfortable district where we can show immediate results and say, look how great this strategy works, or are we going to tackle this thing head on? And that's the challenge. Who's willing to be accountable for it? We're accountable. The numbers are what the numbers are. But really, what's driving it? It's all of our responsibility as the general public and as citizens to realize what's driving the violence and who's responsible for the violence. Are the police the only ones responsible for the violence? What about the ownership of the communities themselves? What about the ownership of those that are committing the violence? What about the ownership of the agencies that are supposed to be preventing and intervening in the lives of those that are stepping up and committing acts of violence? Is it everybody's problem? Absolutely. Is everybody at fault? Absolutely. You can't point the finger in one specific direction. But I think over time you look at the trends.